She never imagined that a simple glance at the baby monitor would unravel everything she thought she knew about her marriage. In the soft glow of the nursery, a betrayal unfolded that would shatter her trust and force her to question the people closest to her. The whisper that followed was the cruelest twist of all, one she could never have prepared for.
Hello, my friends. I am Olivia, and this is Olivia's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story.
The hum of the baby monitor was usually comforting, a soft static that reminded me my daughter was sleeping peacefully, tucked under her pastel blanket. Tonight, though, I felt a restless energy in my chest as I poured myself a glass of water, my hand trembling slightly as I watched the little green light flicker. Life had been ordinary, predictable, and that was exactly what I needed. Between diaper changes, endless loads of laundry, and the quiet moments when I could breathe, I had carved out a fragile sense of peace. But sometimes peace feels more like an illusion, doesn't it? My husband, Mark, had been my rock, or at least that was how I saw him. We met in college, and there was this undeniable ease between us, a comfort that made me believe love wasn't supposed to hurt. Yet, as the days stretched into years, I couldn't ignore a small, gnawing insecurity. Perhaps it was just the exhaustion talking, but there were moments when his laughter felt a little too bright, his charm a little too smooth. I pushed the thoughts away. I needed him to be trustworthy, to be the safe harbor I could cling to while navigating the chaos of motherhood. And then there was my sister, Julia. She had been the vibrant, fearless one, always slipping into rooms with a laugh that demanded attention. Our childhood was tangled with secrets and shared dreams, but lately I noticed a subtle tension between her and Mark that I didn't understand. Silly, I thought. Family dynamics are always messy. Still, I couldn't shake the tiny twist of unease that settled in my stomach whenever they were alone in the same room. That night, after tucking our baby into her crib and dimming the lights, I retreated to the living room. Mark had said he'd be finishing up some work in his office, but the house was unusually silent, except for the gentle whir of the monitor. I picked it up, resting it on my knee, and stared at the small screen, feeling the quiet hum of anticipation. I wanted to see my daughter's chest rise and fall to confirm that all was as it should be. What I didn't expect was for my heart to catch in my throat the moment the camera tilted slightly. The scene that greeted me made me freeze in disbelief. Mark, my husband, was standing close to Julia, my sister. The intimacy of the moment was shocking. Their faces were impossibly close. And then Mark leaned in, pressing his lips against hers. My fingers tightened around the monitor, knuckles turning white. My mind screamed, unable to process what I was witnessing. The betrayal wasn't just in the act itself. It was in the audacity, in the quiet confidence that no one would catch them. And then, as if my heart couldn't take any more, Mark pulled back just enough to whisper something into Julia's ear. The words were soft, dangerous, and impossible to hear clearly. My breath caught. I leaned in closer to the screen, trying to catch every syllable. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. That's when the screen flickered, and I heard it again. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, my ears straining to catch the words my husband had just whispered. The camera wobbled slightly, and my stomach churned as I realized the intimacy of that moment had been real, not some illusion my tired mind had conjured. My heart pounded in a chaotic rhythm, each beat a hammering reminder that everything I thought I knew about my life might be a lie. I felt a wave of nausea rise, but more than that, a dizzying confusion. Why? Why would Mark betray me like this? And why, of all people, was it Julia, my sister, my confidant, the person I had trusted with every secret of my childhood?
I wanted to turn off the monitor, to pretend I hadn't seen it, but my body wouldn't let me. It was as if the screen itself had a grip on my soul, refusing to let me escape the truth.
Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the image on the monitor. I could hear the faint giggle of my baby from the nursery, a sound that should have been comforting, but it only intensified the ache in my chest. This house, our home, was supposed to be a sanctuary. Yet in that moment, it felt like a trap, each wall echoing with betrayal. I wanted to scream, to run, to wake Mark up and demand answers, but fear rooted me in place. Fear of what I might learn. Then Mark moved back, his eyes scanning the room as if sensing someone was watching. My pulse surged and I instinctively ducked behind the couch, heart threatening to burst through my chest. He whispered again, closer this time, but it wasn't directed at Julia. The words were almost a caress, and yet they carried a weight that made me shiver. There was a tone there I hadn't expected, a softness, almost guilt. My mind scrambled to interpret it. I pressed my forehead to the monitor, desperate for clarity. What are you saying?" I whispered to myself, barely breathing. My sister's laughter was muffled, the sound strange and distant, like it belonged to someone else entirely. I felt my trust fracture with every passing second, the life I had meticulously built unraveling like a fragile thread. Suddenly, the screen went black. A flicker, then static, and the room felt impossibly silent. I couldn't see them anymore, couldn't hear them, and the absence was suffocating. I sank to the floor, clutching the monitor to my chest as if it were the only lifeline left. My mind raced, trying to piece together the impossible. Could this be a mistake? A trick of the camera? My heart knew better. I couldn't unsee what I had just witnessed. Then, from the darkness of the nursery, a faint creak of the floorboards made me freeze. I hadn't heard anyone move, but the sound was deliberate, slow, ominous. My thoughts spun. What if they knew I had been watching? The idea made my stomach twist. My hands shook violently as I reached for the monitor again, hoping, praying that it would turn back on and show me a different reality. And then I heard it. Mark's voice, soft and low, carrying the same words I had glimpsed in the whisper. "I never wanted you to find out like this." My breath caught in my throat. The words weren't just shocking, they were loaded with meaning, with secrets I didn't yet understand. My entire world tilted, and I realized that nothing, not my marriage, not my family, not even the life I thought I had, would ever be the same again. I couldn't breathe. Mark's words echoed in my mind, slow and deliberate. "I never wanted you to find out like this." My chest ached with a mixture of anger, betrayal, and a strange, almost desperate curiosity. What could possibly justify this? I had to know. I had to hear it from him. I stood, legs trembling, and made my way toward the nursery. Every step felt like moving through molasses. My mind was a storm of disbelief. The house was silent except for the soft cooing of our daughter, a fragile reminder of the life we had built together. And yet, that life felt like a lie. I reached the doorway, peering inside, and froze. Mark and Julia were there, but the scene wasn't what I expected. Julia's eyes were wide, filled with fear, not the playful mischief I had imagined, but genuine terror. Mark was holding something small and delicate in his hands, something I hadn't seen clearly from the monitor. A tiny bundle wrapped in a white blanket. My pulse spiked, confusion twisting with shock. What is going on?" I whispered, my voice trembling despite my attempt to stay calm. Mark's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of guilt and urgency. He stepped forward, hands raised, not in surrender, but in a desperate plea. "Olivia, please, you have to hear me out before you jump to conclusions."
I wanted to scream, to demand explanations, to lash out, but the sight of that little bundle stopped me. Julia was holding it carefully, almost reverently. And then Mark spoke again, his voice low, almost breaking. "This isn't what it looks like. That's not us." My mind reeled. Not us? Not us? My heart wanted to reject the words outright, but the look in his eyes, the raw fear, the weight of something he had kept buried, made me pause. I took a shaky step closer. Then explain it to me, now, please." My voice was barely audible over the roar in my ears, over the sick twist of dread in my stomach.
Mark exhaled sharply, glancing at Julia, who nodded slightly, as if urging him to speak. "That baby," he began, voice tight, she's not alive." I blinked, stunned, my mind struggling to process the words. What do you mean?" My throat was dry, my hands clammy. Mark swallowed hard. She was born premature. The doctors, they said there was no chance. We didn't want to tell you. We couldn't bear to hurt you while you were recovering from your own delivery complications. Julia was helping me, making sure everything was taken care of. We, his voice cracked, and he looked utterly broken. I was kissing her out of grief, Olivia, not in love. I whispered because I didn't want her to leave, to be alone. The world seemed to tilt sideways. My knees almost buckled. Grief, anger, confusion, all collided inside me like a storm I couldn't escape. I wanted to scream at him for not trusting me, for hiding this from me. And yet, part of me understood the depth of his pain, the silent agony he had carried. Tears streamed down my face, and I stumbled toward them, trembling. Mark reached for my hand, but I pulled back, my chest heaving. The nursery felt impossibly small, suffocating, and yet, somehow, it was also a space of fragile truth. I don't know what to say," I whispered, my voice cracking. I need time." Mark nodded, his eyes glistening. "Take all the time you need. Please don't shut me out completely." I stepped back, needing space, needing air. But as I turned toward the hallway, I felt the weight of the truth settle over me. The house was silent again, but it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy with secrets, with grief, and with the fragile possibility of understanding. And somewhere deep inside, I realized this night had changed everything, forever. The house felt impossibly quiet as I wandered through the hallway, the baby monitor still clutched in my hands like a lifeline. Each step echoed against the walls, a reminder that nothing would ever feel ordinary again. My mind was spinning, replaying Mark's words over and over, the whispered grief, the stolen moments, the secret he had carried alone. I finally sank onto the edge of the bed, burying my face in my hands. Tears fell freely now, not just for the confusion and betrayal, but for the weight of the sorrow he had kept hidden, and for the tiny life we had lost. I realized with a painful clarity that love wasn't always clean or easy. Sometimes it was messy, tangled with fear, grief, and impossible choices. And sometimes the people we loved the most carried burdens they couldn't share, not out of malice, but out of desperate protection. Mark came quietly into the room, closing the door behind him. I didn't look up immediately, not trusting myself to face him without unraveling completely. But then his hand rested gently on mine, and I felt a tremor of the old familiarity, the warmth I had loved, the steadiness I had clung to. "I know I've hurt you," he whispered, voice trembling, "and I don't expect forgiveness right away, or maybe ever. But I needed you to know the truth. I needed you to see why I did what I did." I finally lifted my head, meeting his gaze. The grief in his eyes mirrored my own, and I understood in that moment that the love we had wasn't gone. It had just been buried under fear and secrecy. My chest ached with conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, relief, and a fragile glimmer of understanding. I don't know if I can forgive it yet," I admitted, my voice shaking. "It hurts so much, Mark, seeing you like that." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. And I'll spend every day proving that my heart has never strayed, that my loyalty has always been with you. I made a mistake by not trusting you with the truth." For a long moment, we just sat there, hands intertwined, letting the silence stretch between us. Not the suffocating silence of betrayal, but the heavy, tender quiet of shared grief and fragile honesty. I felt a small spark of hope, fragile but real, that maybe, just maybe, we could navigate this together. Finally, I spoke, my voice soft but determined. "We'll need time. I can't pretend it didn't happen. But I don't want to lose you either." Mark's relief was almost visible, like a weight lifting from his shoulders. "I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes." I let out a shaky laugh, tears still streaming, and for the first time that night, I felt a sense of calm. Not peace, not yet, but the beginnings of it. Our love had been tested in ways I never imagined, but the truth, painful as it was, had a strange way of clearing the air. As I finally placed the monitor back on the dresser and looked at the empty crib, I whispered a quiet promise to myself and to the memory of the tiny life we had lost, that we would heal, slowly, imperfectly, but together. And in the shadowed corners of that room, where grief had once loomed, I realized that even the deepest betrayals could sometimes lead to the most profound understanding. Love, after all, was never simple. It was messy, it was painful, and yet it was worth fighting for.